60 countries, accounting for nearly 48% of greenhouse gas emissions, had joined the agreement by mid-morning in New York on Wednesday, meeting one of two thresholds for the Paris Agreement to enter into force. That satisfied the requirement that at least 55 countries sign on. But the second threshold requires those signatories to represent 55% of global emissions, and they fall a little short. New signatories representing 7.5% of global emissions are still needed. But Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says the progress made in the span of just 9 months is remarkable.
What once seemed impossible is now inevitable. I'm confident that by the time I leave office, the Paris Agreement will have entered into force.
The Paris Agreement marks a pivotal step in the long march to address climate change, with China and the U.S. leading the charge.
They're the world's two largest greenhouse gas emitters. And so when they joined the deal earlier this month, that was intended to provide momentum for other countries to also sign on. Both of these countries have committed themselves to having the deal up and running by the end of this year.
But with a lot of the terms based on broad principle, the key challenge now, climate experts say, is to set guiding rules.
I think a lot of these rules have to be in place so that it's very clear and very transparent that when a country submits a nationally determined contribution, which is essentially their plan for greenhouse gas emissions, that it meets certain standards that everyone accepts and that everyone can see and that everyone can judge for themselves what progress is made 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, so that these plans can become more ambitious over time, which is the key aspect of this agreement.
Critics say what's on paper isn't enough to limit the average global temperature from rising more than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, much less the 1.5-degree best-case goal outlined in the agreement. Supporters say the Paris Agreement sets out a clear path for what nations need to accomplish this year, next year, and over the next decade. But there are still details to iron out, like how to finance projects to lower emissions and how to support developing countries in their efforts. But if nations are committed to ratification, climate change experts say we could see very aggressive carbon reduction over the long term. Chiahemen, CCTV, New York.